hold on. There we go.
Yep.
Can you all hear us?
Heard some whispering. Yeah, Robert, that's because I don't know how to live stream, and Principal Astra is a regular at this, so, you know.
I have literally never been on a live stream in my life.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I figured you were doing cam work or something, you know, something a little, or Zoom calls with the with all the kids at the high school. Don't you have like online prep rallies now because of COVID?
Oh God, those are awful. I have my assistant do those.
Amazing. School spirit.
Sorry, a vice principal, whatever.
Well, thank you all for joining us for this beautiful little live stream. We're here at Sharon's home, which is super nice and fantastic.
Sharon's out of town, so I'm dog sitting.
Which is why we have Cece here. Hi, Cece.
And house sitting, which is why we have this lovely apartment.
I mean, I like to imagine that we both broke into this place specifically to do this and then leave without Sharon knowing.
Sharon doesn't know you're here.
That's true. Oh my God, I am gay and doing crime. It's Pride Month.
Sharon doesn't know you exist. Sharon thinks she's real. Who's a good girl?
That is
yes,
a little complicated.
Girl.
So,
yes, you're a good girl. Yes, you are.
So, Principal Astra,
yes.
You've become recently aware that you are a creation from my sort of like writing skills. How do you
thanks
feel?
for that.
Yeah, I'm sorry. First of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, how do you feel about this?
Well, I do have to say it does explain a lot. Every time I wake up, several months has passed, so yeah, it does explain why that is. And I have to say it is a very interesting perspective to be not real and to know that you are in fact a fictional character. But it does seem like it would be less depressing than being stuck, continuing to live in this nightmare hellscape you inhabit 24/7. So, yeah, I think I'd take being a fictional character.
Yeah, so would I. It'd be much less expensive than therapy.
But could you have written me a slightly less restrictive blazer?
You know, we have some costuming restraints at Bad Astra, so like there are a lot of choices that both Astra and I make together in order to create the best content. So I kind of leave that up to her in terms of like bringing you to life, how that looks. I just write the words that come out of your mouth.
You know, I was really fine not being a principal. Do you know how hard being a principal is? And do you know how badly it pays?
Yep. Listen, my partner's mother is a vice principal. I am fully aware that I have put you in a bad situation.
Because I've always had a passion for education. Obviously, being a dominatrix is, of course, my money job, while being a principal is the unpaid passion project.
You're just, okay, so you're more than just a principal.
Yes, obviously. Did you not... Oh, for fuck's sake. I'm gonna do a costume switch.
Oh my God, it is Dominatrix Astra. This is such a surprise to see you. I was just here with Principal Astra talking about you.
We are, in fact, the same character.
What?
Yes.
I need to look at the continuity document sometimes. So Dom Astra, is there a particular appearance that you have made or a timeline that you have lived in, I guess would probably be the best way to put it, that is your favorite? Like,
so, during the nuclear energy video, I did really enjoy that because I got to meet Sharon. Ugh, such an annoying little woman. Although, her check's always clear. So,
is she a proper sub or is she a brat?
She's a bit of a brat, I have to say. But, we've been seeing each other since the nuclear energy video.
Oh, good.
Which, wow, it's been like a year and a half now.
Oh my God, yeah.
This is possibly the most stable relationship I've ever had.
With clientele or just in general?
Both.
Both?
Very much both, yes.
Amazing.
Wait, am I canonically married? I can't remember.
I don't think it is specified. Would you like to be canonically married?
No.
Okay.
I think I would like to be single.
Okay. I've really only figured out all the continuity for Sharon, not you, so please exist however you wish.
Thank you.
I was wondering, in terms of being sort of like in the BDSM community and in the sex work industry, are there any misconceptions that you wish the viewers understood more? Because we don't really get into that side of who you are too much because of monetization reasons.
Yeah, so first of all, as a fictional character,
I keep forgetting.
I cannot speak for real life sex workers.
Yes.
However, I do want to point out that sex work is in fact work.
Correct.
And frankly, I think a lot of common arguments that I hear against sex work are really just based on a stigma. Really, it's based on stigma surrounding premarital sex with and women, and I think that's problematic. So like, the classic one is that it's like exploitative because you're selling your body, but like coal miners and models and freaking Instagram influencers, of course, like literally anyone doing physical labor is selling their body. So if you think that sex workers are especially exploited, you might want to examine your own biases on that issue, because I'm not getting black lung doing what I do.
That's true. How are the health insurance benefits?
Terrible. Because sex work is currently illegal and criminalized in most of the world. So unions can't form, and safety concerns are still a thing. Getting protection from SA or abusive bosses, not as easy. So I would recommend legalizing sex work, because it is in fact real work, and if we legalize it, we can regulate it and protect people. And then of course you say, oh, well, you can't make that legal because human trafficking and slavery and child labor and SA, and those are all separate issues. Human trafficking for any other job is still very illegal.
Yep.
SA and statutory are still very illegal. So, on this channel, we do not welcome TERFs or SWERFs in our feminism. So,
please leave if you are a member of those communities.
Yes. Trans women are women, and sex work is work.
Yep.
If anybody watching would like to contribute to sex work advocacy organizations to help out sex work, to help out sex workers, I'm sure they can do the work on their own.
Yeah. Very good at it.
We have several links in the description, including SWAP, special shout out to SWAP Chicago, Moho Justice, that's in Missouri, and 304 Army Detroit. There are organizations all over the country, but I wanted to highlight some local Midwestern ones. So let's check in on the chat.
Yeah. So Emily Chambers, all work is real work.
Yes.
Correct. Excellent. I'm glad y'all are passing the exam that we've put forth. It's very easy. All right. So we have Robert Williams. You're not getting black lung unless you're doing some kinky stuff.
Yes, I have not ever taken a client into a coal mine or done anything with cigarettes or nicotine.
I'm sure Sharon's ex, Cole, probably has.
Yeah, Cole did ask several times, but I had to put boundaries in place.
Boundaries are healthy and important.
And he is no longer a client.
All right. So, let's see. We're gonna get into some of these questions a little bit later for sure. But in terms of,
By the way, thank you, Emily. I saw that comment.
yeah. But yeah.
Would you believe that my actress did not have to purchase anything for this outfit?
Damn.
Yeah.
Astra's into some fun stuff. I'm very ace. I don't understand most of this.
Astra did burlesque in college.
Really?
Yeah.
Incredible.
Did you not? We were in my like senior year show.
In Astra's senior year?
In Astra's senior in Astra's senior year show, the group she was dancing with raised $5,000 for Planned Parenthood on opening night.
Hell yes. I know a lot
Spring of 2017.
I know a lot of burlesque performers, funny enough, at this point in my life, but Astra was not on the list because she isn't currently performing.
That is correct. After college, Astra had to unfortunately get a day job and stop performing for a while.
Yeah. Well,
in any respect.
In any context, yeah. But if y'all in the audience are looking for a nerdy burlesque group, I am friends with a few of the performers in Crescent Moon Nerdlesque, which is a local Chicago burlesque situation. They had a space show where Astra with 2 S's performed, not associated with Bad Astra.
Although we did do a crossover collab.
There was a crossover collab.
Yes.
So that was fun, but like otherwise there's not a lot of crossover.
Yeah. Crescent Moon Nerdlesque is fantastic.
Yeah.
And Foxy's amazing. We love her.
Oh yeah, Foxy is amazing. Foxy LaFleur is so talented. Oh God, I can't remember the male burlesque performer with them that I know
We
personally.
should probably move on to the topic.
Yeah, all right.
We could spend an hour just promoting the Chicago art scene.
We truly could. So I guess my first question regarding the actual video that was up recently is, emotionally speaking, how difficult was this topic for you? So
for me, not super difficult. I am a fictional character.
Yeah.
But for Astra, it was a little bit more emotional, and then the woman who plays Astra just decided that she needed to leave the state right after.
You know what? I mean, it definitely was one of those scripts as a writer that I would have loved to abandon society for like an extended period of time immediately after writing, since that took me 5 days to write and then less than a day to edit.
Yeah, after the research took our team 3 days, plus the sensitivity read of the research was an extra day.
Yeah.
And then you by the way,
wrote the damn thing.
Yeah. By the way, it is very important when we write when we write scripts that focus on issues that don't all completely affect us. We always try to center the correct voices. So for this script, we actually reached out to someone we know who has been working in the abortion activism space for more than 5 years. She has done some incredible work, and she made sure that all of our language centered the needs and rights of the patients, and was basically making sure that we didn't accidentally shame people, which was important because while our main goal was to try to meet people where they are, we weren't trying to convert pro-lifers. That's never going to happen. We were trying to reach out to people who might be on the fence, or they consider themselves pro-choice, but they're not really sure why, and they hear arguments and they can't necessarily articulate to the people in their lives why they're pro-choice.
And we're also targeting the Sharons too.
Yeah.
Those who like semantically don't agree 100%, but like once you actually talk to them about it, they're like, oh, I realized that now my issue was semantics, or my issue was like so like very narrow and very simplified in terms of the information they had access to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because definitely while researching for this script, we determined that, and while being a principal,
Yeah.
I noticed that the sex ed curriculum at the school and at a lot of schools is severely lacking. I recently heard the statistic that sex ed is required to be medically accurate in only 7 states. So when we were looking at the various kind of pro-life arguments that we wanted to combat, when we were looking at all of the different things that we wanted to address, we really wanted this video to be very comprehensive and to give people who consider themselves either centrist or liberal or even leftist the tools to talk to people in their lives who are pro-life. And we found that the vast majority of the issue is just straight up medical misinformation. That's one of the reasons that we decided to put this at a school and make this a parent-teacher conference to show that Tommy...
It starts at the educational level,
Yeah.
especially in a lot of schools. I was fortunate enough to go to a public high school that had a pretty decent sex ed program. However, we did not learn anything about abortions because it was a wealthy conservative area, and I'm sure the parents had an impact on the curriculum we were taught. Mental health was also very much stigmatized in most of the stuff that we saw. Like, I remember seeing a presentation in PE class, not even like sex ed class, about mental health that made everything sound like a death sentence. So when it comes to approaching topics like these, not only are we trying to center the correct voices and make sure that we are being as sensitive as possible to subjects that don't necessarily impact us at this moment or potentially even in the future, but also, you know, there is a level of you do have to meet people where they are, and trying to say that there's no responsibility to educate others that don't understand, or just like outright dismissing people, it's not going to continue the conversation in any way that's actually like healthy.
Yeah, because on the one hand, it is nobody's it is no marginalized person's responsibility to educate their oppressors, obviously.
Full stop.
However, if nobody steps in to educate people who have not received education, they will attempt to Google themselves and end up on some far right corner of the internet. There was a study on Google search results with search terms like LGBT, and they found that while around half the sources were neutral, so like just news sources, around 40% of the sources were like Christian hate speech, just straight up Christian hate speech, like conservative outlets, hate speech, etc.
And there are
only 4% came from anything that could be labeled progressive.
And one of the challenges that I found, at least in this script, of like the people that I got into internet fights with, I don't start fights anymore because it's just emotionally draining. But what I found is that they started citing sources that looked like they were professional, like medical sources or like from a respected journal. But as soon as you went into the about page, it was clear that their agenda was pro-life from the start.
Yep.
It wasn't a not like bipartisan source.
Yep.
And so I think that especially with a lot of these philosophy and opinion-based stances that masquerade themselves as legitimate science, legitimate actual like factual information, instead of what essentially boils down to a difference of religious belief and philosophical belief, that's especially when you get into the long sort of list of alt-right sites that will start you down the rabbit hole because they look bipartisan.
Yep.
You always got to check your sources.
Yeah, and Googling is a skill. I see on the internet, in like social media, in comment wars,
Yeah.
people saying things like Google is free. And one thing we have both learned from having professional, corporate, academic, nonprofit jobs, I think we've both worked in all of those spaces.
Yeah.
Googling
I haven't done
is...
corporate. I've never had a corporate job. Fun fact.
Yeah.
So I get paid less for the same bullshit. Anyway.
But you don't actively make the world more evil, though. But
I do in my free time.
one thing we have learned from working with people who are older than us is that a lot of people don't know how to effectively Google. Like, a lot of my jobs are just, I get labeled an expert because I can Google the answer faster than anyone else can.
Yep, I unintentionally became some staff members' go-to IT person because I understand these systems because I've grown up on computers. So instead of taking the time to actually try to Google it and learn themselves, they often ask me, and so I direct them now to a page where I have gone through tutorials so then they can learn on their own, and I can empower them with that information so they don't have to email me.
And I also find that a lot of audience members, in fact, come to me with science questions, and the first place I go is Google. And I realize that I have the privilege of a very comprehensive science education where I learned how to identify what is a good source, what doesn't sound right, so maybe I should check it, what sounds more speculative, so maybe I'm gonna check it. I have learned and kind of grown up on the internet, and I have had a lot of experience in academic environments, so I have this kind of 2 or 3 sources, and I'll check 2 or 3 sources before making a restaurant reservation. Like, that is just the way it's been grilled into us, and a lot of people don't have that. So just saying Google is free does become an accessibility issue because we can't assume that people know how to Google. Like, I know that seems weird because, like, you can type anything in, but there are so many alt-right, Christian conservative, straight up troll sites that are designed to mislead people, to confuse them, to spread hate speech and bigotry, and they dress them up as academic sources.
Yep. And I think one of the most important things to remember, at least from my perspective as an author for this channel, is that accessibility has to be the focus because we are dealing with, education at the heart of the channel. And also, like, finding very well vetted academic sources is very difficult, also because a lot of these sources are behind paywalls. So you can't necessarily assume that people can access these different sources because there's like a level of economic wealth you have to have in order to find these legitimate sources and gain access to the information inside of them. Meanwhile, like, InfoWars and a lot of like very alt-right media is free to access.
The Bad Astra creators use their frankly, their university access codes to look at New York Times articles, read scientific papers. A lot of the research done for this channel is paid for.
By a university.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's not even just like adults don't know how to use Google thing, because like we grew up with the internet and like Google is free.
A lot of people our age don't know how to use Google. When I am frankly, when I'm researching a topic that I'm not super familiar with, like anything biology, and frankly, this video,
and squishy physics.
Yeah, for this video, every single piece of information, I either checked with a known expert or checked upwards of 5 sources.
Yeah.
For everything. Because I knew there was so much bad information out there. And I wanted to come to Tommy's parent-teacher conference very prepared.
You know Sharon. You know what she's like.
I did not realize they were the same noble.
Yeah, that's like the tricky thing with like very generic first names. And also,
and last names.
And
Sharon had never mentioned the names of her children.
Yeah, that's true. She really only mentioned the ages. I know this because I keep track of all of this now, because Sharon Noble's family tree I keep discovering new things, and I have to make sure I know everything before I write them.
Yeah, so I'm learning new things about Sharon all the time. Mm-hmm. She doesn't like to talk about her personal life that much.
Yeah.
Except Cece. She goes on and on about Cece.
Who's taking a nap.
Taking a nap.
So
should we check in with the chat?
Yeah, let's go ahead and check in with the chat. I've kind of been going back and forth. Robert Williams said, idiots doing random Google searches leads to becoming wildly misinformed, but you're right, because you did your own research. I'm shocked that this might possibly happen. Yeah, so there's a really awful internet culture that is just a fact of life at this point, of people thinking they know more than licensed professionals. Like, this entire video, you can have so many opinions online, right? And you can search it up, like for the vaccines video even. Like, you can do your own research, but at the end of the day, you're not going to have the same level of knowledge as someone who went to school for this for years. And I see this even like with the younger generations on TikTok doing their own research into psychological disorders.
And self-diagnosing them as everything.
And self-diagnosing themselves and thinking that they know best as a result, and that their diagnosis that they gave themselves is just as legitimate, even though they have not gone to medical school, they haven't done the years of training, and on top of that, they don't have the access to the most recent information in those academic journals. And the DSM-5, which is not even supposed to be used for diagnosing people, fun fact, that was never the intention, is very limited in the scope of what it is. And like, you really do need to have a psychologist to look at all of the things that cross over and the comorbidities within these illnesses to say, this is what you have. Yeah. That's my little soapbox, just because as someone with mental illness, like, it's a very dangerous thing to self-diagnose.
Now, with all of that said, the trust experts, I promise they know more than you. This issue especially is even more complicated because with things like crisis pregnancy centers, there are people who will impersonate doctors, who will lie to you about their medical credentials, pretend to have licenses, wear a lab coat so you think they're a doctor. And when you are going to what you think is a clinic and seeing what you think are doctors, you aren't going to immediately be suspicious and questioning them on their medical background. And even if you do, they might lie to you.
Yeah, unfortunately, those sorts of centers are very good at masquerading like legitimate sources, like we talked about earlier on the internet, when they have a clear agenda. And I think one of the most comforting things I've seen with that is that there was an advertisement on the CTA for one of these crisis centers, and someone in pen wrote over, "This is not a clinic, go to Planned Parenthood."
Yep.
Because there is just so much, there's so many more pregnancy crisis centers than there are clinics where you can actually talk to a doctor. They're
Yep.
just they're less regulated because they're not actually doing any medical work. They're just talking to people being like, here are your options that aren't abortion, and I'm going to fearmonger with all of this misinformation to convince you to carry this child that you may not be able to provide a good life for.
They lie about how adoption works. They lie about how much it costs to have a child. They lie about the medical repercussions of having a child versus getting an abortion. Like, they lie and say that having an abortion is really unsafe when all of the scientific evidence shows that getting an abortion at any stage is safer medically than carrying a child to term. If you do not want the baby at the end, carrying a child to term is an incredibly medically risky and unnecessary thing to do.
Yeah. I think that it's a complicated biological process, right? And it mostly affects people who identify as women, though there are a lot of people with uteruses that this does impact that do not identify as such. So you are talking about like over half of the world's population being affected by this, and like at least in our country, I believe, again, it's just like just over half of the citizens in this country have a uterus. So we like there are what, 7 Supreme Court justices? 9? It's an odd number.
It's 9.
It's 9. Thank you.
Do you need to?
I'm not good
sit
with
in
numbers.
On one of my classes.
I'm not good with numbers. I'm allergic. I just know it's an odd one. Listen, I was having issues with 1.5 times 2, so 9 Supreme Court justices. There are 9 people on the Supreme Court that are making decisions for more than 51% of the country, and I believe if you look at the statistics as well, the majority of people identify themselves as pro-choice, like in terms of the public vote.
It's
like
about
the popular
70%.
vote. Yeah, it's about 70% at this point. So
that stat is a few years ago, and I may be misremembering it.
Yeah,
but
like,
it is a clear majority that identifies not as they believe abortion should be legal.
Yeah.
These aren't like pro-abortion, just pro-legalization.
Yeah, pro-legalization, which, statistically is a lot safer than the alternative. So when you really look at a topic like this, not only are you looking at the biological consequences of carrying a child, you're not only just looking at the biology and the squishy physics of it, you are looking at also the political power play that's happening and how that then affects those biological processes if the right medical care is not easily accessible.
Yeah.
And it's barely affordable to begin with because this country does not have a single-payer healthcare system.
Yeah. We should also very much focus on the fact that even though, like, the opinion was just a draft, it hasn't been dropped yet, we do still have legal abortion in every state in the country, supposedly. Abortion is still incredibly difficult to access because of cost, because of time, because of distance to a clinic, because of getting childcare. A significant portion, if not most, people who receive an abortion or who seek out an abortion already have children.
And a lot of them are also below the poverty line. So not only is this a biological one, it's a social issue as well.
About half are below the poverty line, and 3/4 are below twice the poverty line.
Yeah.
So making abortion difficult to access is a form of class warfare. Making contraceptives difficult to access is a form of class warfare. Frankly, making medical care expensive.
Yep.
Like,
it's a bad idea. Like, it's not an idea that is made out of these are fellow human beings, therefore we should care for them because that's the government's job. That's not what they're doing. When
60% of bankruptcies in America are caused by medical debt, healthcare isn't seen as a human right in the country, and
A lot of Europe thinks we're a fucking joke as a result, which, you know, I agree. The medical care system in this country is a joke. But I think one of the things that at least I try to focus on as the writer of the script is not only just like, yes, we should stay in our lane because we're just science, but this science extends to real life consequences that have a lot of intersectionality that's like embedded into this situation. So like with this one, I would say also with the vaccine one, you really have to take an approach that is holistic if you are going to make an impact on people instead of just focusing on this is the medical misinformation. So at least for me, it kind of went more into my wheelhouse because I am more along the lines of like political science, philosophy, sociology. Like those are the ones that I understand much more than squishy physics, than chemistry, than the ones with a lot of numbers.
Also, this is the live stream. We didn't promise you science. We do like story time and baking on live streams.
That's true. We make no promises.
Yeah. This is a live stream, and part of why we wanted to do this live stream was to talk about these issues in a way that isn't just happy science jokes.
Yeah, there's like, that's always like the struggle too on my end, is like, how many jokes can I make before this is just like blatantly disrespectful, or like, what kind of jokes can I actually make when this is so dark and serious? And how do you pace a script like this where it is just really a lot of doom and gloom that you have to be able to break up in order to keep it watchable?
I'm still very annoyed that you wrote Science Tommy.
Listen, if there is anything the character of Science Tommy is good at, it is middle school and high school dick jokes. That's just easy humor to go to, and it kind of breaks things up, and it makes the situation a little bit more real and believable. And you cut out some of my more explicit jokes, so, or rather Astra did. Astra cut out some of the more explicit jokes. I was trying my best, but sometimes, you know, the innuendos are just a little bit too much. So, in terms of the content.
Boundaries, Eris.
Yeah. Boundaries.
There's principal.
Yeah.
And there is off-duty principal.
Yeah.
And I was at a parent-teacher conference.
Yeah.
I was trying to keep things professional.
It's also more fun if you're like a little on the edge. So that's what we were
Science Tommy is a child.
Yeah, he is canonically a child, and I forget that because he has a full beard. All right, back on topic.
Okay.
So when it comes to the actual content and how this like sort of intersectionality works, what do you think about the intersectionality between like the Supreme Court decision of how it's actually written and then the other places that the language then impacts, like IVF, it impacts miscarriages and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So I don't think as a principal discussing this with Sharon and Tommy, I was able to really go into a diatribe about I wanted to put in the context of criminalizing miscarriages. I wanted to put in the context of criminalizing IVF. But one thing that I kind of had to sacrifice in terms of trying to make this parent-teacher conference accessible to both Sharon and Tommy was that I worry that I presented the miscarriage and IVF thing as sort of unintended consequences.
But that's the quiet part that we're not saying out loud. But we're going to say it.
Yeah, we're going to say that. So these unintended consequences of limiting IVF and criminalizing miscarriages, they're not unintended. It's all about restricting the bodies of people with uteruses. It is all about
control.
Yeah.
It's not about the welfare of anybody.
Yeah.
It's literally just about control, and
because
we need to be able to call it out and say we see right through you.
Because imprisoning women who miscarry does make sense to people who only see women as baby factories. If you dehumanize people you see as women, and I'm just gonna say, I'm trying to see it from the perspective of basically the extreme religious right, and queer people just don't exist in their worldview. There's no room for us. Poof. Yeah.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride, everybody.
No, we can only do that on July 1st. July 1st, we
is
just
when we
disappear from existence.
Yeah. But if you dehumanize the people you see as women to the point where their only value to society is seen as being wives and mothers, you naturally would view anyone struggling with infertility, suffering a miscarriage, or who simply doesn't want to be pregnant right this second as defective. How dare she reject her only purpose in life? It'd be like a broken smartphone. What do? You replace it.
Oh, I recently saw a horrible quote from Bruce Willis, I believe. I was just like scrolling through a feed, and he was like, you know, you can only control men's natural impulse to reproduce to a certain point. And like, he was saying this in the context of like married couples, I think like women marrying men and not wanting children. And I saw that and I was just like, that, first of all, you are...
How dare you assume that about men?
Yeah, how dare you assume that about men? Like, men are not inherently monstrous. Like, being a man does not mean you are a monster, does not mean that you have to reproduce, that this is the definition that you have to fit into. Manhood could really just like be whatever you want it to be at the end of the day, because it's a social construct. But it was just like one of those things of like, it was the same logic as the, oh, she was wearing a short skirt so she deserved to be assaulted logic. Yeah. Because I'm like, what? So men are wild animals that can't control themselves? Why are they in the government making decisions? Like, it's just like both reducing women to objects and men to animals, which
is dehumanization for everyone.
Misogyny sucks for everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, continue.
It does suck more for women and people perceived as women.
Mm-hmm.
And I see religion adding like moral justifications for all of this, saying that it's ordained, but at its core, any arguments against reproductive justice and access to reproductive health care are based in the complete erasure of queer people and the dehumanization of women.
And just on a theological note, as a recovering Catholic, when you look at the Bible, when you actually look at the scripture, there is no mention of queer people in any part of the Bible, and that's because there was a translation issue. So the classic quote that they use to defend homophobia is like, "Thou shalt not lay with a man as you do with a woman." That's the one that they use and reference. That was not originally translated as such because I believe in the original Hebrew, those two words that meant man were different words. And the proper translation, when you really look at it, is child. So it's against pedophilia, but you know, the Catholic history doesn't have a great track record with avoiding that in their communities. So
we can also talk about the connection in a lot of people's minds between the queer community and pedophilia. That is a really, really harmful stereotype and a really, really harmful piece of misinformation that has been perpetuated.
And it might even come from this like mistranslation of those two being the two that people would like confuse them for, but it was an active choice in terms of that translation. Also, that one specifically is in the Old Testament, and if you are a Christian who believes that Jesus died for your sins, you believe that Jesus died in order to get rid of the New Testament laws, which includes
the Old Testament laws.
Old Testament, yes. Which includes things like don't eat shellfish
or
and
mixed threads.
Mixed threads, which, you know, Sharon does all the time, and like her friends Becky probably do too. So it's like this deliberate picking and choosing of Bible scripture that often results in these moral justifications for why X, Y, and Z are wrong, even though they're really ignoring the core of the actual scripture and the religion, which is Jesus and God loves everyone. They created that like us in their own image. We are their perfect creations. Yes, we sin, but like there's nothing about us inherently that is sinful because we were made in God's image.
One of the amazing things...
Talked too much about Catholicism in this.
One of the amazing things about religions is that they can unite and activate a population. They can provide people with a sense of purpose, a moral compass, all of that. They can also be used to manipulate people to do pretty much anything. They have been used to keep people in poverty and enforce classism. They've been used to convince people to die for a war to get land for a rich person. They have been used
to justify monarchs staying in power even though they are completely evil and like do not follow the word of God according to the scripture.
Like cults.
A lot of them do use some flavor of Judeo-Christianity in a lot of their messaging.
Religions like Judeo-Christianity is it's embedded it is the thing we have to deal with most because we live in America, and not even Judeo-Christianity, really just Protestant Christianity, specifically Puritan Christianity, is what our society has kind of ingrained in it. But other religions around the world have the same issues. And when you strip all of that kind of religious morality away, you do see across religions a lot of common threads that basically are rich, wealthy men, specifically rich, wealthy, cis, straight men.
And we're specifically talking about Western religion, so like the Judeo-Christianity. I don't know enough about Buddhism to like extend anything to that. I don't know enough about Islam to extend a lot of it to this, but because it's in Judeo-Christian sort of world,
there are a lot of, I'm
not going to make any claims against any religion that I don't know.
Yeah, but the common threads of, okay, let's just narrow our focus to various Protestant and Catholic religions, like various Christian religious denominations and cults in the U.S.
Yeah.
They all have different stated values and beliefs, but at the core of a lot of it, especially the more extreme versions, is keeping rich people in power, promoting white supremacy, and promoting the subjugation of gender minority people, including women.
I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second. Sitting back up on it. Okay, the thing that I fucking hate the most, that is very relevant to this like debate about abortion, is the lack of separation of church and state that is continuing to be like chipped away at by the Supreme Court. So if you are not familiar with the separation of church and state for whatever reason, basically it means that churches don't have to pay taxes, and in exchange,
so they have
no say,
massive amounts of wealth.
Yeah, they don't get taxed unless they're not fully registered as like a recognized religious or whatever. Like there's some legal things that are tricky.
John Oliver started a fake megachurch to prove just how easy it was to start a megachurch, and churches don't get the same scrutiny that a regular business would. So if you are a business and you are breaking all kinds of employment laws and you're discriminating against patrons and employees,
you're gonna get in trouble with the government.
Yeah. Oh, and if you're embezzling, if you're committing wage theft. Like,
Theoretically.
Theoretically. Like, there are a lot of businesses who do all of these things that are illegal and also common practice.
Yeah.
We talked about that a little in the abortion video, but...
Yep, Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption. That is the mega church that John Oliver started. Yes,
but in churches like Our Lady of Perpetual Exemption, you can do all of that. You can purchase land without paying property taxes. There are loads of churches on prime real estate in Chicago that don't have to pay taxes. And
that like came out of a situation where, because of the immense religious involvement of the Church of England, like when we started sort of like, colonizing and murdering all the indigenous people over here, they specifically put up this separation of church and state in order to prevent that from happening and to prevent the government having a say in what you do religiously. And what that also means is that religion should have no place in the government, because we also have the freedom of religion, which states that everyone is allowed to practice their own religion as long as you're not hurting anybody. And that is also, taken with a heavy grain of salt. You are allowed to practice your own religion, and the government cannot tell you that you cannot and punish you for it. So when you see a lot of these religious arguments of, God, meant for that child
anything
to be in the
that says
body.
God, anything that says God
Anything
should
that-
not be relevant.
Yeah, anything that uses any sort of religious philosophy, even, I would say, should be held to extreme scrutiny, because at the end of the day, if abortion is made illegal in the United States, this is not a scientific decision. This is a religion decision. This is a philosophy decision, not actual medical facts. And that is also infringing on the rights of other religious minorities who are allowed to get abortions. I, as a pagan, my gods don't care whether or not I get an abortion. I can get one, and they'll be chill about it. So by saying that I cannot get it, they are infringing upon my rights as a pagan to practice my religion under the guise of morality, which again is tricky because human beings don't know what the pinnacle of morality with a capital M is. Like, we are not intelligent enough to figure that out. Yeah. We don't have access to a God to, ask questions, and Nietzsche killed God, so we'll never know.
Let's also talk about whether, as a society, we view a fetus as a person, because this is a bit that we completely cut from the video because it isn't really scientific, it's more legal questions. So, for example, miscarriages usually don't result in funerals. Child support doesn't begin at conception. If a immigrant or if someone is here on a visa and that person gets pregnant, they don't immediately get to stay forever because they're carrying an American citizen.
Yeah, legally speaking, that one's a little difficult since I don't know the immigration laws that well, but
no,
it's a significantly easier process at the very least.
Like, it's actually a thing for U.S. citizens where if you are a certain point along in your pregnancy, you're not supposed to travel abroad because you want to give birth to an American citizen.
Bold of them to assume that that's a good thing.
Oh, well, it's...
Yeah, I get it.
It is very difficult, just logistically, to have a child who is a citizen of a different country than the parents. That is just a logistical difficulty. So if a child was conceived in one country and born in another, the child becomes a citizen of that other country. Like, as a society, we don't give maternity welfare benefits to pregnant people, just to people who have already given birth. And there's Like, I could go on and on.
There's no continuity with the philosophy and then the legal benefits. That's the thing. Like, the legality is not catching up to whatever logic that these people are using to change the rules, and the like moral philosophy that they're basing everything off of, which, you know, is not good. It's not great.
It's just very hypocritical.
Yeah.
Also, like, there are a lot of arguments about, oh, well, you should leave everything up to either God or fate or the universe. Like,
whatever higher power you believe in.
Yeah, there are a lot of arguments that you should not attempt to take control over your own life. And even beyond, like, the reproductive healthcare sphere.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good life advice.
Yep.
Like, that is telling people they shouldn't have agency. Like, no, you should decide for yourself what career you want to pursue, who you want to date and marry, whether or not you want to become a parent, how many puppies to adopt.
Listen, I'm biased. I don't want kids. I don't want puppies. They're all high maintenance.
Hey, boo. Hey, boo, boo.
Cece is the only dog that I actually like in this world. And honestly, telling people that they're strange for not liking kids or dogs and saying that's a red flag, absolutely ridiculous. I am evil for separate reasons.
Also, we should use this opportunity to promote the evolution video.
Yeah, that's coming out soon. I got to do a Catholic joke edit because I still like memorized way too much of that as a child.
Yeah, we are going to be talking about evolution, about how the Earth is not, in fact, 6,000 years old. I will not be in that video.
Nope.
In fact, Astra will not be in that video. The star of that video will be Cece.
It's her turn to play 3 characters at once, isn't it?
Yes,
Isn't it?
So she will be playing a creationist and 2 scientists.
Yeah.
What?
I just want you to read this one. I don't know if I can say it aloud. Robert Williams, I'm looking at your comment and I'm just like this. I
Just reminds me of the one scene in Legally Blonde.
Which one?
The one where she's arguing her case in class with Warner.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yep. All right. Cece's back to taking a nap. It's exhausting being her. So yeah, that's coming out. We also have a Chaos Hour coming out. The goal is next Friday. Who knows? It's a Chaos Hour. I'm allowed to do whatever I want.
Oh, Surf, how are you? Swerf? Surf?
Sirf.
Surf.
Sirf.
Surf.
That's how I'm pronouncing it. You can
Hello,
feel free to
Sirf.
correct us
Yeah.
by all means.
I would love pronunciation guides to your names.
And I will make sure. Marcia's like, don't.
Don't see a urologist.
Oh, okay. I'm not. I have a story about that, but that's TMI for the internet.
Yeah, I am a little concerned that the U.S. has "In God We Trust" on everything, not just.
Oh, that was
of
what
conservative
added in the
statements.
70s?
Yeah, so a lot of
50s?
a lot of the God language in On the Money, in the Pledge of Allegiance, was added very recently. And there are kind of 2 factors that were involved there. One, the rise of evangelical political activism, which was not a result of societal, it was a result of integration. Evangelicals were really, really against school integration because they were white supremacists. Many of them still are white supremacists. But
they keep that part a little bit more quiet now.
Now they do. But
Just
evangelicals activated by integration became incredibly politically active, and that is one of the reasons we have things like "Under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance and "God We Trust" on the money, and various references to the Christian God in
separation of church and state.
It's
That's all I'm gonna say.
one of the reasons why every presidential State of the Union ends with "God bless you all," like why the oath of office ends with "So help you God," why you're swearing on a Bible.
Oh, hold on. Sorry, my eyes rolled out of the back of my head.
Another key reason, and the reason it really became a thing in the 50s and 60s, was to separate us from the godless communists in Russia.
Woo!
One of the big pieces of propaganda against the Soviet Union was that they were attempting to force, whether or not it was an atheist society or a cult is up for debate, because when you force any set of beliefs on people, whether or not it involves a higher power, is it really free choice? Is it really freedom of religion? No. So one of the many things that was very American exceptionalism and why America was better than the Soviet Union, why we were the good guys, it was because we had God on our side. Like, that was a huge piece of propaganda. So
there are a lot of gods. If there's only one on our side, we're losing that fight, as we should. I will say the major shout out to the Satanic Temple, only for the fact that they are very good about challenging a lot of these laws in terms of freedom of religion. They've done a lot of activism work to really make sure that separation of church and state has
Have they actually succeeded in any of those lawsuits though?
I think there was at least, I think the statue one was one
that was just them suing Netflix.
No. Not the one suing Netflix. Also,
I know they won the suit against Netflix because they had to pay a settlement over Sabrina.
Yep. We won't even touch about my opinions on that. Anyway, so
the show or the lawsuit?
The show.
Okay.
So I believe they had a statue erected in a very religious city or something, as a monument, and they had all the proper permits to do it, and then everyone got really upset because it's a Satanist statue, and also if you read into Satanism, it's not that bad. It's very misunderstood as a religion. Anyway,
I mean, you do realize that the Satanic Temple, they are a joke religion. They were founded during the Bush era by two guys who wanted to use George Bush's ridiculous defensive religion nonsense against him. So they tried to create an organization they thought he would hate the most they possibly could.
Yeah.
Using that law. So they aren't real Satanists.
Yeah.
They are a political activist organization that uses the aesthetic of Satanism specifically to piss off George W. Bush.
And speaking as someone who knows legitimate Satanists, it's misunderstood as a whole. Anyway, I think they won that monument one because they had all of the permits and they did have the freedom of religion, but instead of keeping the monuments up, they basically took away all religious monuments in that area because they were we can't have a Satanist sculpture up, but they had no issues with everyone else.
It worked.
Surf, which I believe is the pronunciation we went with on the first try. Correct me if I'm wrong. They said the first one was correct.
Okay, Surf.
Surf mentioned that the Satanic Temple also challenged the flag where they're from, but it didn't go through because they have "In God We Trust" on their flag, which is some absolute nonsense.
Also, is that Alex the Gur or Alex Thieger? Alex. I completely agree that it's very culty.
Europe thinks it's culty too.
Yes, it is incredibly culty. Having to say the Pledge of Allegiance every day from kindergarten through middle school,
and actively being shamed if you didn't for whatever reason.
If you didn't stand up or got the words wrong, I remember seeing a student get yelled at and have their grade threatened because they didn't say she didn't stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance one time. I do remember once we got to high school, a lot of students just refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and
same, because then it was established as a right, like very publicly, because I think there was like a legal issue with it that came along with it.
Like although that was also like that was the same year that they instituted a moment of silence for reflection and or prayer in Illinois schools. I remember our school started by just like saying, okay, moment of silence.
Mine too.
Okay, on with morning announcements.
Yep.
And then eventually there was enough pushback from the students because it was very blatantly prayer in schools. And I had the privilege of going to a rather liberal high school. They ended up just...
What was that like?
I still didn't learn about queer people until college, but I mean, I knew they existed, but I only learned about gay sex in the context of AIDS.
Oh, you learned about gay sex?
Only as a disease transmitter.
Oh, we didn't even talk about that.
Yeah. I did not know that lesbian sex existed until college.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the intercourse stuff that much. I went to a very conservative high school as a comparison. At least I don't remember. Also, I was ace and didn't pay attention at all.
We spent many weeks.
We spent more time on drugs than we did on sex, for sure.
We spent many weeks on heterosex, specifically penetrative sex. Like, that was all they discussed. And then they were like, but if you don't want to get pregnant, you should do other stuff. We're not going to tell you what that other stuff is, though. And then they also had these bizarre lessons on consent. I have some severe, like, what is SA? What is R? Very, very questionable definitions that we were presented with.
Yeah, I don't remember it being stressed a lot.
Lots of victim blaming in the curriculum.
I remember for that section, there was definitely a lot of talk about like abusive and controlling relationships, but not necessarily in the concept
think that
of
would have been
consent. Granted, it didn't really help much because, you know, my school was a hellhole. But anyway, I remember in college getting a more in-depth presentation freshman year for like the orientation stuff, and like that's where the sort of like it has to be an enthusiastic yes came into play, which was revolutionary for me, let me tell you.
That was not, I think I had so weirdly during welcome week my university had a really good presentation on consent and relationships, and they talked about the enthusiastic yes. They talked about how different people mature at different rates, and different people are ready for different things at different times, and you can always change your mind. And it was just a very good way of framing it. Yeah. And I think I learned more in that like 90-minute effectively a 90-minute assembly done by the theater department than I learned about consent in like my full-on semester health course.
Yeah.
I got CPR certified in high school.
I did too.
Yeah, we had to do that.
Yep. And we also had a self-defense training, which was fine. So when it comes to college consent, like there's a lot of it, like you get a lot of teenagers who weren't taught consent properly before they get into college, and that's why like a lot of the presentations have to happen. However, my partner was in a fraternity, which is a fact I try to forget daily. But anyway, he was the chief safety officer for his fraternity, so he was the one giving these presentations to his fraternity members and like making sure that everything was safe. I think he also like went to a convention in New Orleans to also like train up on it and like get better presentations and like swap and underage drink in New Orleans.
I also think we should bring this back
Yep.
to why it's relevant. So one of the issues with not teaching consent and having a consent-based framework, not just for things like sex, but also for foods that you want to eat or don't want to eat, activities that you want to or don't want to do.
No is a full sentence,
Yeah.
even if that is, no, I don't want to go to your birthday party.
Yeah.
Like, it's part of being an adult.
And teachers and parents, and you can't just scream. Learning when to exercise your agency in a context where I won't hurt other people. Like, if you don't want to hug someone, you do not have to.
And that's usually like obedience that is taught by the family too. Like, oh, give your grandma a kiss before we leave.
Yeah.
Like, you are forced into that behavior.
If you don't want to play this sport, you are allowed to stop.
We're buffering. Oh, I didn't.
No.
I didn't get that either. My parents forced me into playing piano for years, even though I told them I hated it every step of the way.
Yeah.
And they never let me play the harp.
So as children,
We're still
oh no.
buffering. Let's pause for a second.
Let us know when we're back. Can you still hear us?
Okay. Yeah, it looked like it was buffering twice from what I could see, but then again, like, it looks like we're good now.
Yeah. Write in the chat when you can hear us.
Yeah, please.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah, we're gonna keep an eye on the chat. Once everything looks good to go, we're...
Oh, it's good.
All right.
Robert says it's good. Excellent. Okay.
Robert, thank you for
Yeah.
saving us and being a reliable stream attendee in order
Yes.
to help us with the tech. Honestly, we should just like promote Robert Williams to like moderator or like tech guru.
When we get a Discord, like when we have enough viewers, subscribers, patrons to make a Discord, then we can talk. Once we have enough live streams to justify having a moderator,
Hell yeah.
then we can talk. But we don't teach kids consent. Like, that's just something we do not do as a society. We drum in obedience and deference to authority figures because you defer to your parents, you defer to your teachers, you defer to your bosses, you defer to police officers, you defer to politicians, you defer to people wealthier than you. But that deference and that obedience being the only thing we're taught does lead a lot of people to not realize that consent is important in every aspect of their life, and to not realize that agency is valuable. It also teaches people that if they are more powerful than someone, that person should defer to them.
And that's why I've had a thirst for power for the most of my life.
No. It's why you get things like white supremacists who believe that they should have power over people of different races. It's why you get people who think that anyone younger than them should do as they say. And it's why you get people who don't think that a woman or other pregnant person exercising her agency by getting an abortion should be allowed.
I guess when it comes to like looking at American political theory,
It's why people don't think employees should start unions.
well, good on the Amazon labor union. I know they had
Yes.
a like rally recently. I follow their Instagram and they're great.
That took forever to get started because of all of those union busting attempts, but we are very happy that it finally happened.
But so when I look back on to sort of like, or when I really sit and meditate with American political theory about like why we are taught obedience, I think it's because it maintains the culture of control in order to like further agendas, especially because when you are taught obedience to the authority figures within the structures that are built to have these people maintain power, it becomes psychologically very difficult to challenge them without recognizing how dangerous that becomes. But we can talk about
choosing to marry someone of the same gender challenges a lot of patriarchal norms. Choosing to leave your job and find a better one.
It's so hard.
Yeah, leaving a job voluntarily is really, really psychologically difficult for a lot of people because we are programmed to worry about what will happen to our employer if we lose our job. We feel like we owe them.
It's an abusive relationship. This is the psychology of an abusive relationship, full stop. Which, you know.
That got a little spicy for a science channel, but okay.
Sorry. There's going to be a neuroscience episode eventually that talks about psychology, so.
It's why we don't push back and try to negotiate salaries or rent or food prices. Like, we are taught culturally to be very docile and submissive and to let things happen to us and to be easily controlled.
And that's why education is power and also turns you into a liberal snowflake, according to my parents. So I think we should probably wrap this up.
Are liberal snowflakes powerful? Is that what I'm hearing?
I think,
because I do not feel powerful.
I don't feel powerful either, but the thing is that I am so much less. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I'm about to out myself. I grew up in a very conservative family in a conservative area, so I was in that rhetoric a lot, and I genuinely believed it because it was the only thing that I was really exposed to. And that was an angry, scary time because a lot of the rhetoric is fear-based. It is the fear of what happens if, an immigrant steals your job. Well, the fear then becomes not the immigrant stealing your job, but really the core of the issue is unemployment is not good in this, in our country.
Financial security
is essential.
Is so tenuous.
Yeah, and you are closer to being homeless than you ever are to being a billionaire. It's a whole awful thing, and
even
it's just scapegoating.
If you are college educated, even if, for example, doctors and lawyers who are supposedly doing really well for themselves start out with tons of debt.
Oh yeah.
So
I've already talked to my partner. He has a plan to try to get through his debt, and more power to him.
Medical residents work crazy hours, and they are frankly abused by the system. It is a common joke. I'm not making a controversial statement.
Yep.
To say that medical residents are very exploited and very abused and very overworked.
A lot of grad students are too.
Same. So highly educated people who are supposedly doing capitalism right and doing really well for themselves are, first of all, way closer to being homeless than being billionaires, but way closer to being homeless than to having financial security. Because if you have to leave your job for a medical reason, whether you get a physical injury or mental health burnout, you lose your income, you're drowning in debt, your health care isn't paid for. So you could very quickly lose your housing if you stop that grind.
Okay, so back on topic. Hold on. So when it comes to that sort of rhetoric, I remember going into college, that was the first time that I was able to be exposed to anything other than that, and the almost brainwashing and psychological torture that I went through as a kid, but that's unrelated. Well, maybe it is. So when you go into college, you are exposed to different perspectives other than your own, and you are able to actually explore topics because you don't necessarily have that sort of all-consuming childhood where you're living with your parents, you're living with them as an authority figure, and therefore you have to be obedient. You have to, follow all of the rules. And so
you are never presented with the idea that they might be fallible individuals.
Yeah.
One big thing about becoming an adult is realizing that your parents can make mistakes.
Oh, and they've made so many. But so, like, there is this definite shift, at least for me, because, like, not only was it a shift in, okay, now I finally have access to different perspectives and, oh, actually, this makes a lot more sense than what I was being fed all my life. But on top of that, it was just, like, it was such a good thing for my mental health on top of that, because, you know, liberal ideology, at least the stuff that, like, we subscribe to, is not based in fear, it's based in hope. And that just feels a lot better than being afraid of whatever scapegoat the GOP picks next.
And we are using liberal not in the political theory sense, but in the U.S. cultural sense, which just means anything to the left of Sauron.
The cultural philosophy.
Yeah. So if you're in Europe, liberal / leftist.
Yeah.
Or I guess centrist in Europe.
Yeah, right. Oh gosh, we could be doing so much better. And like I feel like that's the sort of like cultural liberal philosophy of we could be doing so much better. We know we can do better. Whereas opposed to when I was in the conservative ideology, it was everyone is against you and that's why things suck. Everyone is out to get you. You have to survive on your own. So it's a very isolating ideology too. And I'm sure I will probably get into this with Professor Abeloff, who will be appearing on the channel at some point for an interview. He is a political science professor from the University of Tel Aviv that is currently at Cornell teaching there. He's also the professor who teaches HOPE, which stands for Human Odyssey in Political Existentialism, which is the top taken course, I believe, on EDX, which is an excellent website if you're looking for like just free classes online taught by reputable universities and professors. Like,
we are not sponsored. We'd love to be sponsored.
We're not sponsored. But I've taken a lot of their philosophy courses over the years, and Professor Abeloff taught that class. I cold emailed him essentially from my university email, and we've developed this wonderful sort of like back and forth in friendship because he also grew up in a conservative family, though they were in Tel Aviv. So he has the Netanyahu family, whereas I have the like Trumpist family. So he'll be on the channel at some point.
Yeah, I do think we should close basically by saying that the most important thing the most important pro-choice argument, the core of it, is that people should have agency over their own bodies. People should have agency over their own lives. And having a child when you don't want to traps people in poverty. It removes so many opportunities because, as a society, we've decided that when you have a child, you have to be its primary caretaker for 18 years. And adoption is not a simple process.
There are a lot of kids in foster care. There are a lot of kids in orphanages. Like,
there are
it's
2.5 million unhoused children.
Yeah. So this is a very complex issue that you really have to look at, not from a sense of you're killing babies perspective, because that's simplifying so many other factors and like so many other
also
problems.
If you think you're saving children, loads of 14-year-olds get pregnant.
Oh, and if you think you're saving children, we need to have better gun legislation, because school shootings on the regular is killing more children than like abortions, because abortions do not kill children. They kill fetuses. They kill a clump of cells most of the time.
Yeah. You know, dinners, they kill corn. Dinners kill meat. Vegan dinners kill wheat quite often, and soy.
And oftentimes there's a lot of exploitation too. So just stop eating.
Yeah. You can't eat.
We are anti-food. This is officially an anti-food channel.
I'm literally literally was just eating right before the...
Right. But yeah, so I think at the end of the day...
Right after this.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, when we have these conversations, and like, yes, there's a lot of medical misinformation, we also have to understand that there are humans on the other side. And so when I was writing the script, I very much wrote it for like my mom. She's very much the inspiration for Sharon because she is a conservative politician. But as soon as I start explaining things to her and actually meeting her where she's at and having these conversations, she immediately switches to agree with me. So there is this level of like semantics get in the way so often, and we often cut off these conversations before actual understanding can happen because they are a lot of the times emotionally charged. Like there's a lot of emotions that go behind these sort of subjects. And yeah, while it's fun to really dunk on idiots on the internet, which is one of my favorite hobbies,
it's not effective.
It's not effective. It's not productive.
Yeah.
At that point, you are not trying to convince the other person. You are trying to convince the audience, the people who might read those comments. And it really does matter how you approach these topics. And at least for me as a writer on Bad Astra, I do my best to approach these topics with as much respect for the human on the other side, the human that is pro-life, because at the end of the day, once you dehumanize the other side, you've lost.
And we are self-aware.
Yeah.
I am very aware that me as a character is not going to attract the eyeballs of someone on the conservative side of the issue.
Unless they are leaving hate comments, and thank you so much for your engagement.
Oh my god, YouTube taking those hate comments down, really?
We had a literal death threat. That was
We had 3.
fun. We had 3
We
death
had
threats?
3. They were all taken down.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was so ready to dunk on them for not being pro-life.
You did dunk on one, and
I
then
did
it got
manage
taken
to get
down.
on one.
That was the one you saw. Yeah, there
I
were
did
some
get
others
one.
that got taken down before I could look at them.
Wow.
It was very annoying. Death threats are so good for engagement.
They are. And honestly, I'm so emotionally secure and I have a good therapist, so I'm like, keep them coming. Get creative.
I just really like attention because I am a fictional character who cannot be killed.
That's true. If I die, that's the only time that you potentially die.
We are very aware
Yeah.
that conservatives are not going to click on the thumbnail.
Yeah.
We are targeting centrists. We are targeting progressives. We are targeting people who want more information.
Who are ready to have this conversation.
Yeah. Because people aren't going to be convinced by someone on the internet who made a 90-minute video. They are going to be convinced by their friends, their families, the people in their lives who they trust. So the goal of this video, the goal of the vaccines video, the goal of really all of our videos that aren't just straight up science education, like anytime we take on a controversial topic, the goal is to try to add tools to the toolboxes of people who want to have those hard conversations with the people in their lives.
I'm going to do some shameless self-promo. So I just dropped a link in the chat. This is the philosophy piece that I wrote for Professor Abeloff's blog, which specifically tackles this topic from a more memoir standpoint in terms of even just like how rabid and emotional and just like the point is domination in a lot of these online conversations when you see it in the comments. And I had my own experience from my seemingly very liberal, chill friends who all of a sudden decided to like go full manipulative authoritarianism. So like, we're not saying that this is only an issue on one side or the other.
It's in fact very pervasive on the left as well. Like people, like I have been guilty of this in the past. I am working on getting better.
I'm 100% guilty of it, and that's why I wrote this piece. I wrote it as a sort of please don't make the same mistake. But yeah, there is this level of, you know, you have to be prepared to enter into this conversation. You can't have it forced on you because that's not going to do anything.
Now, if you get your thrills dunking on flat earthers and flat earth spaces,
they're anti-Semites.
Go for it. They're way too far gone. They're anti-Semites.
Yeah.
We are not trying to shame you for getting a quick laugh dunking on straight up conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, if you want to bully people who have lost all touch with reality, I'm not going to tell you not to.
I'm a fictional character. I can say what I want.
Yeah, cyberbully the fascists. Go for it. All the bigots.
Yeah.
Just dunk on those. But
if you have people in your life, friends, family, or people and who are kind of falling down that path, who are getting radicalized by this misinformation and propaganda online, trying to like call them out for not knowing the right words or for saying the wrong things isn't going to help. Having if you have the energy to, having a conversation with them and being like, yeah, the reason all of these, I'm going to use a less like charged thing than abortion. Let's use queer issues because that's another very charged thing that like I feel like I can actually talk about.
I thought you were going to be like, the discrimination against really cute puppies. But yeah, talk about queer issues. It's Pride Month.
Yeah, we're going to talk about queer issues because it's Pride Month. But if there are people in your life who don't understand like the existence of gay people or trans people, or don't know what all of the letters in the alphabet stand for. Like, I have very liberal friends and family members who don't know all the letters in the acronym and are often asking me to give definitions for things. Queer education is banned and has been banned in a lot of schools for a lot of history. People have been actively prevented from learning this. Like, not knowing that queer and trans people have always been around in our culture was deliberate. That is deliberate straightwashing and miseducation of children.
And it's also, at least historically speaking, intentional on the queer people because they would get killed. Like, it was a safety issue for a lot of historical queer people to actually need to hide the fact that they were queer and code it very specifically to avoid consequences.
The Holocaust resulted in a ton of burning of like the most prominent queer scientists at the time's writings by Nazis because
gay men were involved, like they were victims of the Holocaust too,
and trans women
and queer people as well.
The
queer part of the Holocaust is very much a footnote in most museums, but it did happen. They were impacted.
And then the AIDS crisis resulted in a huge step backward and a loss of almost an entire generation of queer people. And because of this lack of education, and because of the way, unlike other minorities, queer people aren't always raised by queer people. There is a little bit of discontinuity. So without education, you get loads of teens on TikTok who don't know anything about queer history. And
I'm sorry,
that's not their fault.
There's a Drag Race quote that always comes into my mind.
What?
So there was a panel where there were a bunch of queens from RuPaul's Drag Race talking about gay history and gay culture, and so Derek Barry was talking about Stonewall, and he was just like, yeah, you know, people died at Stonewall, and then immediately Willem, another drag queen, went, nobody died at Stonewall. They didn't. It was just very violent. Like, immediately correcting someone in the queer community. So, like, the level of, like, there's even a level of queer people need to learn their history, too, because it's not immediately accessible in public schools and, like, educational resources.
And even if you know how to Google, a lot of queer history websites and a lot of queer resources are blocked by school computers. And that's... I am talking about queer issues, but I am also talking about reproductive health care issues. Like,
you just need a VPN.
Yeah. Well, a VPN at a school computer is hard.
Yeah.
A VPN at a school computer is hard, especially if it's like a school desktop that you're using.
Mm-hmm.
Or a laptop on really slow school internet that barely works without a VPN. So there is active attempts or active successful work being done to limit people's education. So always approach people who disagree with you with that in mind. And always approach people who disagree with you with that in mind for yourself. Because we are all infallible. We are all products of a very flawed education system. I definitely learned a lot, like both in college and after college, that like no one thought would be important.
Yeah, and then it turned out being really important.
Yeah.
Yep. So with that, I think
Yeah,
my last question for you, Principal Astra.
Yes.
And I'm going to make this a very selfish request.
Oh dear.
However, would you please give me your rating of the pecan brittle oat cookies that I brought for Astra and you? I need somebody else to tell me if they are good or not. This is another Claire Saffitz recipe. I whipped these.
How many plants died making this?
Well,
I see oats in it.
Yeah, there's one. There's also flour in it.
So wheat.
Chicken eggs.
That's not a plant.
I know it's not a plant, but that's...
Is a chicken egg a chicken? What were they fertilized chicken eggs? Because
I'm pro-life for chicken eggs. I'm sorry, I shouldn't. Okay. But there was also a dying succulent in my apartment that didn't witness this, but has been affected. We're going on all the plants. It's not in the.
Did you just forget about the succulent while baking, and that's why the cookie killed the succulent?
I don't know how to help Delgado at this point in my life, and I'm just accepting his slow, painful death. But yeah, please try the cookie.
This is really good.
Thanks. There's over 2 sticks of butter in the recipe.
I'm gonna have to change out of this course if I want to keep eating this cookie.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Principal Astra, for joining us, or Dom Astra, I should say, Mistress.
It's principal to you.
Principal. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And thank you everyone in the chat for participating, for showing up and having these important conversations with us. We very much appreciate you. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Throw one of our playlists on mute in the background of whatever you're doing. I've been doing that during the workday to get our watch hours up. It's
absolutely shameless.
Oh, Astra taught me how to be shameless. I normally don't do this part.
I feel like I wouldn't necessarily like Astra. She sounds like she's way too happy.
Yeah. She's very much like Sharon levels of dog ball. Maybe even a little bit more.
So I do find that slightly endearing.
Okay, like that's her level of just like joy. She's also very productive, and sometimes I just like can't handle it.
Okay, maybe I would like her. Does she do her homework on time?
Yes, she has she used to have planners that were just filled to the brim with just like tiny little writing of all the things that she was doing.
Okay.
She got a theater degree and a physics degree at the same time, and then went on to get a degree in mechanical engineering. So I feel like she had to get her homework in on time.
Yeah, I don't like her. I feel like she does way too much.
She does! I agree! Astra does too much. Finally, someone is on my side.
She just feels a little extra, and it's like, 100%. I get balancing multiple jobs, but like, that didn't seem to be born out of necessity.
Yeah, it seems like it's an unhealthy coping mechanism for all the terrible things going on in the world.
Well, my coping mechanism is snapping out of existence, so...
All right, well, so I will snap you out of existence.
Okay, you're gonna press that button to snap me out of existence, okay?
Excellent! I'm learning so much!
It says end stream, so you gotta